Good morning, everybody. Before we begin today's town board meeting, I have the pleasure of honoring some veterans. So I'd ask Councilman Ambrosino, Councilman Blakeman, Councilman Dunn to join me at the podium to just speak about some veterans that we're honoring today. Today, we honor Cynthia Burgess of Valley Stream, Frank Colon Jr. of Rockville Center, and Ralph Esposito of Floral Park, who were all recently inducted into the New York State Senate Veterans Hall of Fame. The New York State Senate Veterans Hall of Fame was created to honor and recognize outstanding veterans from the Empire State who have distinguished themselves both in military and in civilian life. Cynthia, who could not be here today because she has training, is a 15-year veteran of the Airborne Rangers. Cynthia is a veteran service officer who treats the physical and emotional scars of female veterans and is the head of a nonprofit that not only connects female veterans with crucial resources, but with each other as well. Frank Colon Jr. served valiantly defending our nation for 22 years of active duty in the U.S. Army. Frank now serves his fellow veterans at home through his leadership and participation in a long list of organizations. To just name a few, Frank is the American Legion 10th District Rehab Chair, President of the Long Island National Cemetery Military Organization, Senior Vice Commander of VFW Post 3350, and Commander of American Legion Post 303. Ralph Esposito enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1961 and served on the USS Ticonderoga. Ralph has been a member of the VFW for 44 years, and as director of the Nassau County Veterans Services Agency, he has committed himself to improving the lives of his fellow veterans, both within and beyond Nassau County, by ensuring that every veteran who comes to the VSA receives the benefits that they deserve. Frank is also to be commended for his 43 years service as a first responder and commissioner of the Elmont Fire Department. These veterans have dedicated their lives to causes greater than themselves. Today, we honor them for their past bravery in military endeavors and their extensive contributions to our town and to our community at home. Thank you so much for your service. We are so grateful to have you. Please stand. Before we present you gentlemen with citations, I will invite Councilman Dunn to say a few words.
Thank you. It's unexpected, but never asked an elected official to say something and expect them to say no. And so, you know what? Our veterans, the men and women who served our country, how many in the audience are veterans have served our country? These men and women have, in the prime of their life, 17, 18, 19 years old, they raised their right hand and swore to God that they were prepared to die for this country. As a matter of fact, in the Marine Corps, we said, I am a United States Marine Corps recruit. I serve in the forces which guard my country and its way of life. I am prepared to give my life in its defense, so help me God. Your son made that same oath. I'm so proud of these guys. And anytime I call over to the Veteran Service Agency, Ralph Esposito comes through. And Ralph, thank you. God bless you for keeping up the good job. I had that job for 22 years. I was in the Veteran Service Agency in Nassau County. And I did 22 years as a legislator. Now, but I'm getting old. These young guys here carrying on. God bless you, and thank you so much for what you do for the men and women of our country. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm looking forward to meeting with Cynthia when she finishes her training. I'm sorry that she could not be with us today, but we have two great veterans with us today. As Councilman Dunn mentioned, my son is currently in the United States Marine Corps. He's serving right now in Little Rock Air Force Base, cross-training with the Air Force because he's in aviation, and he'll be going to Cherry Point, North Carolina shortly to complete his training and then obviously deployed. So this is very meaningful, and it's also very meaningful because I am one of the few people in the United States of America who can say that both my parents were World War II veterans. My mother joined the Army. She was sworn in on the grounds of the White House by Eleanor Roosevelt during World War II. She was a surgical technician, as well as my father, serving on ships throughout the Pacific, the Mediterranean, and the Atlantic during the war. So this holds a place very close to my heart. And I've known Ralph for years. He runs a mean barbecue over in Elmont. We always have a good time there. It's always great to stop in with the veterans. With Councilman Ambrosino and myself, we go there and grab a hot dog and a hamburger and a beer with the guys. And thank you, Ralph, for doing that every year. And a personal thanks from the bottom of my heart to Frank. My father passed away. It's almost going to be 2 months now. It's hard to believe. And Frank played taps at my father's burial. So Frank does that for veterans. He takes the time out to go play taps for them. He's an amazing guy. Thank you, Frank.
Good morning. There's nothing I can say. Their deeds far eclipses our ability to say anything here. Just that tomorrow is June 6th, the anniversary of D-Day. This couldn't be more fitting to honor these great men. A round of applause for these great veterans and all the veterans of our United States of America.
If the other members of the town board would like to come and join us just as we present the citations.
Ralph's going to bring it to...
Ralph's going to give it to Cynthia. Okay. Okay, good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this regularly scheduled town board meeting. For those of you who have never attended a meeting before, we will first have public hearings, followed by an administrative calendar. There are meeting agendas available in the rear of the pavilion. If you wish to be heard on any matter before the town board, please go to the rear of the pavilion and fill out a slip, which you can obtain from one of the public safety officers. After the meeting is adjourned, the town board will remain in session, as is our custom for 350 years, to hear any residents who would like to be heard on any other matters. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, good morning. Councilman Ambrosino? Here. Councilman Blakeman? Here. Councilman Diaz-Bazito? I'm sorry, no, didn't forget that. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. And Supervisor Gillen.
Here. Councilman Dunn, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
All rise, face the flag. Place your right hand over your heart and join me. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the first public hearing?
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove the two-story wood frame, one-family dwelling with detached two-car garage and remove all litter and debris from the property in Baldwin.
I do not have any slips on this matter. Is there anybody who would like to be heard?
Meta J. Merriday, Baldwin resident. Just wanted to confirm that I have spoken with members of the buildings department. So just want to, again, make sure that this property, in the process of this demolition, all of the safety measures are going to be in place because it has been in bad shape for a good while. So we just want to, again, make sure on the record that the interests of the residents nearest to that property will be protected. So I just want to have that assurance. But also, as what I said, for the record, I have spoken with the members of the building department. So they have gone over the process with me, and we're comfortable with that. I'll be able to report that to our community residents.
Thank you. I actually just got a slip for Rory Gordon.
Good afternoon, Rory Gordon, 25 Kristen Lane, Hop Hog, New York. Sorry, guys, I drove in and the traffic was real bad. These Chapter 90s, they're going to be demolished?
Yes.
Okay. Are they going out for bid?
Commissioner?
Good morning, Supervisor, members of Town Board. Yes, this house will be going out to bid.
Is that 1 and 2 or just?
After we do the asbestos report on number 2, then we'll determine if that's going to go out to bid or not.
Okay, and number 1?
Number 1 will definitely be going out to bid.
Okay, and then when you do the asbestos report, do they tell you whether or not the approximate cost?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so who makes the final determination on the situation of whether it goes out to bid or not?
It depends on the cost that they come in at for the asbestos removal.
Okay, well, for an example, I saw there was an asbestos removal on the calendar today. It's later on, and the situation was where 3 bids came in. Can you just walk me through the process? One bid was, say, $25,000, the other one was like $25,600, and the third one was $53,000. The first one, they received the bid, it was awarded to them, and then they changed their mind. The second one, they received the bid, it was awarded to them, and then they changed their mind. Then the third person, they got the bid, and they accepted it. Is that correct?
Well, that's not before the board.
Ms. Gordon, we're just speaking on the first public hearing.
Okay,
if you have
well,
a question about something on the administrative calendar, you're welcome to make some remarks when we call the administrative calendar.
Well, my question is can you just explain to me how the process is going to work? So if it goes out for bid, either one of these homes, do they come in, do they physically get into the house to make an assessment whether it goes out for bid or not?
That is determined by the town. Once, what happened with that specific one, since Supervisor, you want me to answer the question, was the first bidder came in, he was the low bidder, we awarded him the job. As we were waiting for him to do the job, he came back and said, I bid too low, I can't do it for that, and he took himself off the list. The second bidder was awarded the job, same thing, he said, I bid too low, I can't do that job. Now we're on to the third bidder, and I was informed by purchasing that because it's been over a year, that it needs to be rebid as complete. The first two bidders have done this in the past, so our recommendation is to the purchasing that they are no longer allowed to bid because they keep holding up the process because they keep putting in these very low bids and they can't do the work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, that was the answer I was looking for. And, but my question is did number one and number two, did they not physically come in the house to give you such a low bid, or did they just come out and they look at the house from the outside?
I don't know if they personally, it was over a year ago, I don't know if they were inside or not.
My point is, I think maybe the procedure might have to be changed here, because look at all the time that got wasted. And I'm just, we're starting out with these two, but I just wanted to know how it worked. That was my question. And thank you, Commissioner, you did an excellent job explaining it, but I think that's something to take up for consideration and not to waste a lot of time. Would you want to live next to that house? I certainly wouldn't. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on public hearing number 1? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I'm sorry. Sorry, Dorothy.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove the one-story wood frame, one-family dwelling and attached garage and remove all litter and debris from property in Franklin Square.
I have Rory Gordon. James Greisch.
Hi.
Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Yes, my name is James. I live at on Baldwin Drive. The reason why I'm here is because I feel that the situation was mishandled by the buildings department. Because I was willing to work with them, and I had opportunities to fix the problems, which they said was the electricity at the time. Now I'm finding out that the plumbing is gone, which I feel that there was plumbing before they boarded up the home, but now they're saying that there's no plumbing, which I had no control over, because the problem is every time I tried to do the repairs, the people in the buildings department would call the cops and say, because I didn't own the home. But the problem is at 2015, when they supposedly said I didn't own the home, I had shown them a deed in hand that showed that I owned the property and everything. Not me.
Do you own the home, sir?
Not now, because the property was taken over May 10th of 2016. I no longer own it, but I'm in the process with the bank, working with them to try to make out a purchase plan with them.
Okay, so you own the home.
I own the home.
Did you lose it in a foreclosure?
Yes, in May 10th, but at the time because what happened was I was in the process of trying to short sell it, where somebody in the buildings department said that they boarded it up on ownership, and it's in the paperwork that they sent. They said, because they were referencing a book called Libra book, and they gave me the page number, which was a Nassau County rule that they were using to board up the house on the ownership.
But you no longer hold title to this home, is that correct?
And as of right now, no, because right now I'm in the process with the bank and the president of or the person that does the sales of the bank, that we're in the process of working out, because they're trying to sell it at a lower price, because they're taking financial loss as far as right now is concerned.
Supervisor, if I may, can I ask the building department to come forward and describe the condition of the premises?
Good morning, Supervisor, members of Town Board. What is before Town Board isn't who owns the property. That is basically irrelevant. What is before the Town Board is the status of this house. This house, we've had issues for the last 3 years, and I have a report from our engineer, who's here today, who basically said, due to the fact that there's large amounts of the debris inside of the home, it's a blocking egress and egress, so it's a fire hazard. Number two, it is unfit for human occupancy by New York State Property Maintenance Code due to the fact that there is no electric, there are unsanitary conditions, filthy conditions, leaking sewer pipes, and failure of essential equipment. There is also unprotected openings in the house in the soffit and attic area, which vermin have entered, and we've received complaints from the neighbors in reference to that. So basically, based on all these factors, it is a public nuisance, and it is a recommendation of the building department that we proceed with this hearing today.
Okay, and may I make a suggestion? I'm going to support going forward with this today, but the building department will give you some time to solve these problems if you're capable of solving them. But it's not going to be a long amount of time. So they do that for everybody. So it's something that if you meet with them and you show progress and you start clearing up these violations, they'll work with you, right, Commissioner?
That is correct, Councilman.
But if you don't, then, you know, they have to do what's according to the code.
Okay, but then that means that they can't be calling the cops, because the whole problem is that maybe not Mr. Ron can't, but people in his department have been calling the cops on me, telling me that because I don't own the home, that I shouldn't be on the property. And this is the whole reason why the property is in the condition that it is, because they were preventing, not him, but two supervisors were preventing me from doing that work. And I've been always willing to work with
Well, you need to have a permit, correct, to do some of the work, or some of the work?
And you have to be the owner to do the work.
Right.
Mr. Greisch, if you are in negotiations with the bank, who is the title holder of record for the home, you may wish to try to get them involved in the conversation, since they are the title holder of record.
And that's what I'm trying. That's what I've been trying to do.
Why don't you do this? Why don't you get a letter from the bank giving you permission to clear up some of the violations? And if you show progress, I think the building department will work with you. If you don't, unfortunately, we have to do what we have to do.
And that's the other problem that I have, because I've been trying to get a hold of Mr. Rottenkamp for over 2 or 3 years, and every time that I tried to talk to try to get a hold of him, everybody's in his office said either he was on vacation or he was out.
Well, sir,
so I'm willing to work with him.
Sir, we have a lot of people in the building department. You don't always have to talk to the commissioner to get things done. We've got a lot of capable people there. Listen to me very carefully.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Go to the bank, get a letter of authorization for you to enter the property, and then if you can show progress cleaning up, our building department will work with you. If not, they are going to do what they have to do to protect the community. Okay? Do you understand that?
That's perfectly acceptable.
Okay, but this is not something that you can,
I'm going to actually be dealing with this.
you got to do this right away.
I'm going to be dealing.
Is that right, Mr. Rodkamp?
That is
Are you
correct.
willing to do that?
Yes, because we've been in this situation for the last 2 years.
I know. We got to bring this to a head.
Since 2014.
We got to bring it to a head, okay?
I agree with that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a slip on this item from, I believe it says Roman Berger?
Good morning, good afternoon, how are you guys?
Good morning. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Roman David, the 18032 Union Turnpike, Fresh Meadow, New York. I'm a representative of Fannie Mae. I'm the managing broker for this property. The property address 867 Hemlock Street in Franklin Square. This property has acquired by the Fannie Mae recently through our foreclosure, okay? We are in touch with the court. We just got a possession of the personal property on the premises. We haven't have any access to the property yet. So we just recently received a court order, okay? And the marshal will go to the property and will do eviction on the personal property. Then we'll have a full possession of the property. And then we're going to do whatever necessary to do with this property to fix it and get it to the condition that it's supposed to be. Fannie Mae will not going to agree to demolish this property, and we have no access. We just acquired this property through the foreclosure.
Okay, so Mr. Davidoff, I'm going to say the same thing to you.
I heard, yes, I
Meet with our
understand.
building department. As soon as you get authorization, start cleaning the place up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have no access to the property.
Their interest is just to clean up the property. So if you work with them, they'll work with you. Correct, Commissioner? Okay.
And Fannie Mae absolutely have everything, whatever needs to be done to the property. I'm going to be the one who's going to be supervising the whole process, and we'll deal with the building department, absolutely.
Okay. So, Mr. David,
Yes.
right behind you is our Commissioner of Buildings. If you would just connect with him, and you can try to do what you need to do to take care of the property.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, I just need some time because, like I said, we had no possession of the property fully, so we couldn't get the entry to the property. But now we got it, so we're okay to do whatever needs to be done, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Felix Procacci?
Felix Procacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square, New York. I've been working with Mr. Grish. He called me regarding his property. This is a picture I took yesterday. I've had 3 houses on my block that looked far worse than this, and they were in foreclosure or they were demolished by fire, and no one ever, and this is a lot of brick and stone here, and they never threatened to tear it down, and it went on for years. Right directly across the street from me, the guy overdosed on crack. The owner. This is the house in question. Yes, and oh sure. And anyway, so I talked with Mr. Grish and his brother regarding this, and it seems like the process seemed to be. The rigidity, I'm not sure about what the formal process is, but it seemed like it was like sort of like the chicken and the egg kind of thing where because, someone had died, they had a mortgage on the house and they, supposedly inherited the house, that they didn't have the official ownership yet, so the town boarded it up, and then because they boarded it up, they weren't able to fix it up, and they had, according to them, once again, this is what they told me, they had 2 offers of sale back in 2015, but they couldn't execute on that because the town had boarded up, and then they restricted them from going onto the property. And I think their belief is vandals took out plumbing, which they did on my block. I used to call the cops constantly. When the other guy died, it was 2 drug dealers on my block. The vandals would come and rip out the plumbing, but the house did have plumbing at one time, and then they ripped it out. So now how do you have a house now if you can't enter it and vandals take your plumbing? Now you're in that situation where there has to be some compassion with the building department and the owners and the people who are concerned, as opposed to just following a rigid policy, which I don't think how rigid it is, and work with them, because I think a lot of this probably could have been avoided had they been more reasonable, because I have all the notes from the building department going back to 2015. I read through it thoroughly and all the resolutions that were passed. I mean, we have a zombie home law. I had a few questions I wanted to ask. Was the lender of this foreclosed property asked to maintain this property and provide a deposit of money to reimburse the town for work done to maintain the property, which is our zombie home law which we passed, I believe, 2 years ago? Was that done? Because that's one of the processes, What prompted the town to decide to demolish this building suddenly? Just because, I mean, I had a wood frame house that went on fire. It was a big fire 2.5 years ago, and it was in disrepair they just moved in this year. They took a long time to get repaired, and the town didn't come along to demolish that house. So it's just, things that it seems like the communication, I can't speak that anything I'm saying is authoritative because I admit it's hearsay. But the thing is, the people are passionate about this, and I just would, looking through the notes, it seems like there's a lot of, wrangling about it, and there wasn't a definitive process set out. If someone comes over to your house and is going to board it up, if you get irate, I wouldn't blame you. It's where you live. And why wasn't, the thing is, was the zombie home law enforced? Was it put on the registry? Is there a process to getting this done, a rigid process, a formal process by which a consumer, a resident can say, okay, at this point, this is where I go, so as opposed to one building commissioner or supervisor telling them one thing, another one telling them another thing? I don't know of any.
Felix, I think the issue is, the seminal issue is that basically there's legal ownership. Yeah, There's legal ownership. Give him another 20 seconds. There was legal ownership issues, and right now, he's out of ownership, so that doesn't even give him a right to be there. So he's got to straighten that out with the bank. If he straightens that out with the bank and he starts cleaning the place up, like you heard me say, we'll work with him. If he can't straighten out the thing with the bank, then the bank's got to clean it up, or then we're going to have to take action, because there may be worse houses in the town of Hempstead, but that's pretty bad, and I wouldn't want to live next to it, and I don't think you would either.
No, I understand, but
I think what you're saying
but
is
part
that
of the problem was from the beginning, I'm sorry, but part of the problem was from the beginning back in 2015, before it was in foreclosure, that there was a question of ownership, and that's what prevented him from going. But then he did get a deed that showed ownership, but by that time, the town had boarded it up. So you're saying like the miscommunication in the beginning caused the problems, from my understanding of what it was now. So like, had things been more organized, and I'm only saying this not only for this situation, but in the future situations, because I don't want anyone to ever go through this, where their house, where if there's a way of fixing the problem early on as opposed to letting it go 3 years later, because leaving any house unattended for 3 years in the cold and the weather will cause problems. Even a well-maintained house could go into disrepair just by a person abandoning it. But just if we had good procedures up front, maybe we could have solved this in 2015 and we wouldn't be here today.
Yes,
I'd
I understand your comment is that you're concerned about the process. So if you have some suggestions that of what you think is wrong with the process that we're following, you'd like to submit them, we'll take them under consideration and I'll discuss them with the building commissioner. But with respect to the specific facts of this case, I think there were some questions about title that were throughout the process, that this person did not hold title to the process, so therefore had no standing to do anything with respect to the house.
But then eventually they did get a proof that they did have it, but it came too late after the building department took action. You know what I'm saying? So let's say I own title, but I can't prove it at this time, and then you go ahead and board up my house and then restrict me from going on that land, and now it goes into disrepair. Now 6 months later, I show you, here's the proof, I did have title to it. That time passed without any, you know, where that lapse of time where I couldn't find the proof immediately is what caused the problem.
Did we, excuse me, did we not have complaints from the neighbors around that, about that house?
No,
We had complaints about it.
And the complaints did go away, too. I read all the notes.
Well, the complaints, the neighbors have a right to be able to live by a home that they feel comfortable with,
That's
okay?
not the issue here. That's not the issue.
Well, it is in a sense,
No, the issue is look.
but your time is up.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying, well, she's the presiding officer, not you. So the thing is, the thing is that.
Thank you, Felix, your time is up.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
she let the clock run a lot while Mr. Blakeman was talking. How long was it? Anyway, I don't believe there is a fixed process. I'm going to foil it, but I don't believe there is a fixed process in the building department that requires, because why wasn't the bank notified prior years ago? Why wasn't this taken care of years ago? Why wasn't, when it was in the foreclosure, why didn't it go in the zombie home list? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. I'm going to have to, I got into this late, so I'm going to foil all these documents to see, was it put on the zombie home list? Was the process followed? Because we have a lot of processes, but a lot of times
Okay.
we don't follow them.
Okay, Felix, thank you. But I said if you would like to put in your concerns, if you would like to submit them, we'll discuss them. Thank you. Thank you. I don't have any more slips on this public hearing. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Yeah.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding regulations and restrictions to limit parking in Franklin Square, Inwood, Seaford, West Hempstead, and Woodmere.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the local law adopted.
Second.
Second, okay. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney, Senior Councilwoman Gooseby, Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding parking or standing prohibitions in North Belmore near Westbury and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I make a motion that the hearing be closed and the local law be adopted.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding arterial stops in Wantagh.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding traffic regulations in the vicinity of schools near Westbury.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Public hearing be closed, proposed local law adopted.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding school speed limits in Roosevelt.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the decision adopted.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law entitled Department of Occupational Resources.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard?
Mita J. Maraday, Baldwin resident. I just need some clarification with regard to just the particulars with regard to this law. What was it? What was the intent of it? What's the direction for short-term, long-term, that sort of thing?
This local law allows the town of Hempstead to use general town of Hempstead funds to contribute to the operations of the Occupational Resources Department, which is funded by the federal government.
Okay.
So basically what happened, Ms. Maraday, is that our Department of Occupational Resources is generally funded by a New York State Department of Labor grant. What happened was because of certain retirement incentives, the department found itself in a deficit because it had unanticipated costs that it had to meet. So this law will enable us to correct the deficit that currently exists in the Department of Occupational Resources so that we can continue operations and provide the very, very important services that department provides to our residents. So it enables us to do that, which had not been part of the law previously.
So this now, if we're talking about incorporating state and federal funds, that follows that this department or this particular aspect have to follow state and federal mandates?
It does, but it's one thing, it's over. This is the one time we need to do that, keep them operating until July. In July, they start back with their normal resources.
Right.
As the supervisor said, we had many, many people to retire, and it took much more of the money than it should have, we couldn't help it, actually, to pay off those retirements. So if we don't want this to close, which serves people in our area, especially my district, because we have many people, we have a 9% job rate here. You know, it's really high. And we do this to train people so that they can at least get themselves ready for work.
Okay.
And it's just for this one time.
Okay, I understand that. But where is the documentation in terms of how do you determine where this funding is actually best utilized? Where are the results? Where are the benchmarks?
Well, you can
It
probably.
seems like we don't seem to have any reports. We kind of throw numbers out, but we never generate any reports. If we spent X dollar, we've generated Y in terms of the number of jobs. And I'm saying this because New York State particularly, you know, exercised its option to use hundreds of millions of dollars on the guise of its startup New York, and it generated maybe 200 jobs. So that doesn't seem to be a great return on tax dollars. So I'm just trying to ask if there could be some type of generation of a report, findings. You know, this is how much money we spent. This is what was generated from it. These are the types of trainings. Again, we need to have some kind of documentation to provide recommendations. You know, I'm really tired of reading
I'm
it.
sure that they have that.
I've visited there at 50 Clinton Street. They do an incredible job. They help men. I saw men and women there that just came out of the service, learning how to use the computer, doing applications and putting resumes together. I was there last week. Island Harvest was giving food to veterans that needed food. They do an incredible job. And for us to give them a little bit of blood infusion, just a one-time thing to get them back on their feet because of the overcost that we imposed on them, then we should do that.
Exactly.
Again,
You can go over there and they'll speak to you anytime. You can
I've
go
been
in
there.
and, okay, have you?
again, yes, I have. There's a lot of places I've been. It might surprise you.
No,
But
wouldn't
I'm
surprise
just
me.
saying,
I know you have
kinda
plenty of
makes
time to
sense.
do that, so I don't
Those-
worry.
It's just ironic. You kind of make those statements, and I'm trying not to take offense, but sometimes.
But no, it's good. You
not
do.
taking
I
it
see you
personal.
around, so
Thank
you're
you. I
doing it.
appreciate that.
It's a compliment.
What I take compliments well. Thank you. I'm just saying, again, all of this should be documented. We have these nice little conversations. You take the pictures. It's in Newsday. I get it. But we need documentation. Taxpayers need to see where our hard-earned dollars are actually going. Results, numbers. This is 2018. We can't just have this, oh, they do a lot of things. Go visit, stop by, have a cup of coffee.
Supervisor, may I?
Would you please
The-
explain to her how they have
depart-
to document, they have to do that?
The department has to file reports with both New York State and the federal government.
Exactly.
So there are documents, there are reports available. If you can foil them, or I'm not exactly sure how they make their reports public, if they put them online or not, but you can call occupational resources and they'll I'm sure assist you. But those reports do exist.
Okay. How can the budget process take place through whether it's here at the township or in any municipality if we continue to operate in this type of vacuum mentality? We are continuing to throw money, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, with little justification from the public perspective as to how it's spent. And
So-
then we wonder why, when these things come out in the media, when everyone still wants to ask the question, how could this happen? You know, we are becoming a national embarrassment in this region for the amount of taxes and costs that we have to go through. We need to do something better. We need to do it differently. And I don't know how many ways, how many opportunities this can be presented, that the question can be asked, that we need to do it differently. We don't model anything positively or proactively for what we pay here. And it really is getting very tiring from this perspective because, as was mentioned earlier, the increase in zombie homes is starting to get ridiculous. You've approved all this, and I'm still on my time, so I'm going to say what I need to say. We're approving all of this for parking signs and violations, and we've got potholes that are like,
We're
that could be
talking
parking
about
lots on
item
their own.
number 8, the Department
I
of
understand that,
Occupational
but what I'm
Resources.
saying
So I have to
is
limit your comments to
occupational
item number 8.
resources.
You're welcome to make any other comments during
I'm
public
trying to
comment.
make I'm trying to finish the comment as it pertains to this. If we're talking about creating the jobs and creating the opportunities, where are we going to put, when are we going to put the information out there in the community that these are the opportunities, these are the jobs, these are the areas, the gateways that we have provided, these are the areas of opportunity. Tell somebody that they can go to the state or they can FOIL to get the information is unacceptable.
I agree with you, and I like what you're saying, and maybe we should do a TV commercial showing people, because you put it in the mail, they're going to look and throw it out, nobody's going to read it. You put a big report in the mail, it's going to cost, and again, cost is something that people worry about. But if you put a TV commercial, people, even if they're surfing, they'll say, oh, I didn't know they did that. All we have to do is call this number or get it up on our computer. So if they don't know how to computer, come down 50 Clinton Street, whatever. I like letting more people know about the wonderful services that the Department of Occupational Resources does have for the men and women, not only coming out of service, but all of our community. So thank you. I'm going to talk to the commissioner there and see if we can do some kind of, maybe go to Hofstra and have them do a free commercial and put it on the air for us.
Exactly. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
We can think outside the box. We
Thank
can
you.
stop. We can maybe stem some of the tide of what's going on. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anybody else?
Felix Procacci, 1165 Barn Street, Franklin Square. I wasn't going to talk on this issue, but I had an idea. Since we're going to be funding this with taxpayer money, aside, our town money,
Felix, I just want to point out to you, or Mr. Procacci, excuse me, I just want to point out to you that these were retirement incentive costs that were incurred in connection with retirement incentives over the past 2 years, I believe 16 and 17, that left Door with a deficit of approximately $700,000. We need to fill that gap. However, this is not a way we intend to operate going forward. We are going to be working with the commissioner to have a sustainable budget so we don't have to have these emergency gap measures going forward.
yeah, but what my idea was to make this department more efficient is why don't they advertise the town jobs, since we don't want to do that? So when there's job opportunities in the town, the Department of Occupational Resources post those jobs on the website.
I disagree with you when you say that I don't want to do that. I had a job
It's
fair.
not you personally. The board doesn't want to do that. At least in the past, they haven't been welcome to that idea, which I've floated for like probably at least 5 years. But that is something that they can do to make themselves more efficient in what they're doing. So it's always nice to talk about all these things, but now if I could see a job that, okay, I'm qualified for this job, I'll apply for this job, as opposed to just send your resume to the personnel officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing? Hearing none, may I have a motion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. And Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding prohibited disorderly conduct at public places.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard?
Rita J. Merritt, Baldwin resident. Again, just curious as to the particulars of this, the genesis behind this particular law. What does it mean?
This specifically delineates banning the public urination and public defecation in public places. The law as currently written prohibits disorderly conduct. In order to make the law more specific, we're making those two changes.
Okay, so it doesn't pertain to verbal or anything like that. This is just about defecation?
Yes.
Urination and defecation, yes.
Oh, okay. When I read this, I was interested because I just felt that there was a number of areas that this could be very interesting. And it might be something to consider as far as it pertains to that type of conduct as well. But I thank you so much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just for the record, Town Attorney, this would not include as a violation if it was an emergency medical condition that someone had. They would be excluded.
That's up to a judge to decide, and the court, I would think.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
it would,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
And how would this actually be administered then? Like, if, again, if someone, no, I'm serious.
Well, I would think that
Are you volunteering,
the person,
No.
the person who,
On my experience, you're not going to try to get me on
The
something.
reason for this is there's been a problem, and the police that were called, that came to the site, couldn't write a ticket because there is no ordinance to put on a ticket. So now there's an ordinance so the police officer can enforce that, you know what, this is disgusting. You're urinating against these people's fence, and they have to look out the door and see, you know, it's getting carried away. So we're giving the police a tool to write the ticket. They have responded, but they couldn't do anything about it.
So in the case of someone who may be drunk, or not necessarily drunk, or under medication, possibly someone who's homeless veteran, I mean, you write them a ticket, and then are they transported to some place where they can get clean, or, I mean, what becomes like
Most
the
of the
next step?
time, and the complaints that I've received, which was the impetus for this, is a tractor-trailer driver will pull over, open the door, and urinate out the door in plain sight. A cab driver will pull over, and rather than go to the gas station or McDonald's or any, whatever, they'll urinate in our parking fields. It's just that it's gotten to the point where it's on film now. People are filming people doing this, and it's gotten carried away. So now our public safety can write the ticket because there is an ordinance, and the Nassau County Police Department can write a ticket too, or in the parks, whether it's state or whatever, they have the ordinance now, so it gives them the right to write a summons to those that deserve. If there's somebody older than me that has a bladder problem and does that, I don't think a cop's going to say, you know what, from now on, get to the, you'll probably direct them to do the proper thing. But if it's constant, something has to be done, and we're doing it.
Okay, I just needed clarification because it's a broad statement, the way it's listed here, prohibited disorderly conduct. I mean, then it's determined, who determines what is considered disorderly conduct. So that's why I just needed the clarification. And now that you have basically given me the background for it, you know, we'll see how it goes. I'm just, you know, I think disorderly conduct, or like I said, the number of potholes. I mean, we need to give citations to these companies that we're paying this money to have these crater-like situations. When you go to other states, their roads are not like that, and they have similar weather conditions, so we can't keep blaming it on the weather. We need to start looking at where we're putting our money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Make a motion that we close the hearing and a local law be adopted.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding governmental transparency.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard?
Councilman Sweeney, I see that you introduced this proposal here. What I don't understand is it says here, we talk about in the first paragraph, openness, transparency, facilitating public access to town records, documents, and information. What happens when the employees of the town of Hempstead don't follow the rules? There's nothing written into this law. They suffer absolutely no consequences whatsoever if they do not institute the FOIL law properly. And I guarantee you that if you took a raise of hands of the people that are sitting behind me that have done FOIL, all of us have gotten back FOILs that are incomplete. We had to wait 2 months, 3 months, refoil, just to get beat around the bush. What consequences? What is the purpose of this law if there are no consequences to the employee?
Employees who would be found to have violated the law would be subject to discipline by the town board.
Well, I think that should be written into this law because that would be the same law that we have today that's not clarified anywhere. If it's not written into the law, then it means nothing just because you said so, because you say a lot of things that mean nothing.
Ms. Gordon, if I could just jump in. I worked with Councilwoman King Sweeney on this initiative, and the intent of this law is to make information more readily available, that should be readily available, to actually decrease the number of foils. So what we've done simply is codify that certain documents that are listed in the resolution should be made available on our website. We're dealing with an aging IT system here, so it may take us a little bit of time to implement it, but certainly something that was very important to me when I ran this race, and which is important to Councilwoman King Sweeney, who worked on this measure, and the town board who has worked with me to adopt this measure, is to codify that this information should be available on our website for residents to see so they don't have to foil it. So I think it's a really, really important first step to getting our government more accessible and more accountable to our residents.
That's all fine and good. I think it's wonderful, but put in the law that your employees are responsible. This is all we have is FOIL. We have nothing else, Supervisor. Zero. Nothing. We don't know what goes on in the system. If we don't have the right answers, we can't proceed. Did you want to say so? I know you guys were talking.
Sorry, Ms. Councilwoman King Sweeney was just making a point to me that our employees are subject to the rules of the collective bargaining agreement that's in place. However, with respect to FOIL, we have legal obligations that we're required to honor. And I know that the clerk, our new clerk, Sylvia Cabana, is doing everything she can to make sure that her FOIL officer, with respect also to our town attorney's office, is making sure that we comply with our obligations under the FOIL law.
Okay, well, with that in mind, I brought to your attention weeks ago, and I brought to Mr. Santino's attention twice, the computers that are in the building department. That is against New York State law to charge its usury prices. And you're still doing it. Nothing has been done. There's been absolutely zero. You can't charge $5 for the first copy and $2 for every copy thereafter. That is not the law. It's 25 cents a copy, and oversized pages, I believe, are $2. That you can't quote me on. Your employees should know that. Your employees actually know it's against the law. They didn't have to tell me. I know what state law is. I called up to New York State. I mean, it's wrong, and they take advantage of the citizens. And, you know, as long as I'm talking about that, can anybody explain to me why there's 2 cash registers in the building department? One to collect money and one to collect checks? Doesn't that seem a little odd that we only take cash and checks and we don't take credit cards?
Ms. Gordon, if that's a concern of yours, I'd be happy to look into it for you, but right now you have to just stick to the public hearing at issue.
Okay, you're right. Okay, and I just have a question, well, a comment I'd like to make. It says the town shall publish on its website in a manner that is searchable and machine readable the preliminary budget and the budget as finally adopted. The format for the meeting today, it's always ungekakt. It's the only way I can describe it. You've got legal pages and you've got letter-sized pages, and when you try to print it out, what I did was I printed out the things I was interested in, and now I get here and I realize, oh, the bottom's cut off because it's not formatted correctly. If it could be put into an Adobe file, my God, you have hundreds of people working here and all kinds of secretaries. This is so important to us. This is the only thing that we have, is to read the document every week so we could come here and speak about our issues. It's not a big thing, but put somebody on that job.
I'm sorry that your copy was cut off. We are working with the clerk's office to bring in a new kind of technology there called Novus Agenda, which will make it filing documents, posting documents much easier.
Yeah, it should be
so
uniform.
it's in the works. I'm not sure if Mr. McKenzie is here, if he can comment on where we are in that process.
Yeah, I'll take Mr. McKenzie's because I want to write it down and see how long it takes to get it.
I'll follow up with you. I'll follow up with Mr. McKenzie because this is something, an initiative of the clerk's office that I think will be a good thing for everybody.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You can speak with Ms. Gordon offline. Felix Bacacci.
Felix Procacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square, New York. Just so we're on the subject of punishment for violation of FOIL, last year, and I believe the year before that, and maybe even the year before that, the town comptroller, who got a $7,000 raise at the last meeting, told me that the audit was not available on October 11th of 2017. I happened to go on Emma, a municipal bond website, and I found our audit that our comptroller said was not available, and I downloaded it, and the posting on it, and I got pictures of all this, was October 3rd. I brought that to the DA's office because, believe it or not, there's up to a 15-day jail penalty for willful violation of records. And I took 5 months the DA took to get back to me, provided no interviews of what he did, sent me back my complaint with all the documents, and nobody was punished for it. This was absolute slam dunk proof. Now, I want to see somebody in this board, and I'll show you all the proof before you act, punish Mr. Conroy and his office for lying to me about the audit. Okay? It was a blatant lie. There was no reason, even the DA, the ADA, he was trying to give me some excuse. It was discretion, they say. We have discretion on prosecution. Well, the discretion screws over the residents. That's what the discretion does. Anyway, so just to get back to that. And then on this issue of the legislation, this legislation is lacking in many ways. First, there is no punishment if the town breaks this law. And even when you go to the DA and there's a DA issue, they don't prosecute anyway. To ensure real transparency, I recommend the town board add the following items that should be published on the website. All job openings, zombie homes, vacant buildings, current active lawsuits with the last date modified with all currently active lawsuits, the last modified date for all posted resolutions, because you guys update the resolutions, but we don't even know whether we downloaded the latest or not. In addition, I recommend to ensure greater transparency that the town modifies zoning law to ensure all concerned persons that are notified each time a zoning moratorium is voted on by the town board, that it be put as a public hearing. Currently, the way the town extended the moratorium for the Woodmere Golf Club, which it was targeted, they did it administratively. They didn't do it, and none of this is written in state law, and it's all done, from my understanding, through legal court orders in the past, decisions by courts that decided this. There's nothing about moratoriums in state zoning law or town zoning law as far as I know. But to put this, so a public hearing needs to be called each time a moratorium is implemented and each time that moratorium is extended, so the owners have an opportunity to know what this town board is doing. Modify town code to ensure detailed budgets for all town-controlled special districts. For example, my Franklin Square Park District, which is up to $4 million, has 5 line items, and it doesn't specify any expenditures whatsoever. Bond, interest, and principal is the only thing that you could discern from it. All the rest of it is lump sum appropriated costs. That's a failure on, once again, the comptroller's department for not detailing out salaries, fuel costs, equipment costs. My park district in 2008, and I have the document from the budget, was $2 million. Today, it's $4 million. It doubled in 10 years. No school budget has doubled in 10 years. Modify town code so that when a resolution is passed, when modify town code to include a resolution so when budget line items are changed, when you move money around like you have 38 transfers, that a resolution is passed to show how the money was transferred to each of those departments receiving those new people. are, how it's done. And every time you change a line item, you move money around from department to department, there should be a resolution. Each resolution should have a clear and stated purpose. None of this is in the public's best interest. Tell us why. Tell us why. If it's really in the public interest, tell us why. Many times, town legislation is passed without providing any data supporting the need for the legislation. Data, some statistics, some polls that were taken, community meetings, people who sign petitions, things like that. People, 2 more seconds. People should have the input. You shouldn't just pass laws because my neighbor complained about something. Okay, now we're going to take down his house because we got 2 complaints. Make sure that there's a legitimate reason. Make sure that it's all documented. So it's not just, well, he said, she said this, and there's nowhere for a resident who's inquiring to turn. And one last thing, and I proposed this to Supervisor Santino and the board last year. I don't believe any government can do transparency effectively. I proposed last year a Department of Transparency, and Just the Facts Media is willing to do it already. I have 25 years of audits that are searchable on my website. I have more transparency. You can get more information about the financial state of this town on my website than any other place in the town. And that's pretty sad because I have 1 employee and you have over 2,000.
Lucille DeFina.
I find this very appropriate. Lucille DeFina, Merrick, New York. I find this very appropriate that all of a sudden you're discussing transparency when just at the last meeting you sat up there and you told me, based on what people were telling you, that I had all these documents on my way to me. They were being redacted and more, and that was a total lie. So who is this law for? It's not, I don't think we need to worry about Marie Jerome and town clerk or anybody like that. I think it's your town attorneys that maybe need to be investigated or looked into. So who is really going to enforce this? Because you're putting all these people in a really bad spot.
Ms. DeFina, is Mr. Amarini here?
No, he's not, Supervisor.
Yeah, well, he's the one who told Jim, I guess, who Jim whispered in your ear and Amarini whispered in her ear that all these foils were on their way to me. Foils I had to wait 45 days for, and foils that you stood there and ridiculed me and tried to make me look like a fool. You better think about what you say from now on, Supervisor Gillen, and stop threatening the people. So this is crap, this transparency law. This is just another way to try to make it look like you're doing something. You're doing nothing. I don't even want to hear you.
Mr. Ra, I have an email from Mr. Amarini who said on the day before the last town board meeting, Ms. DeFina received 80 to 90 documents by email. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And those were the documents
And I believe you said you had no documents, and you received 80 to 90 documents the day before.
There were no documents that fulfilled my foil. It was paper.
You said you got no documents. Did you receive 80 to 90 documents the day before the last board meeting?
That is correct.
And are there additional documents currently being redacted to be provided to Ms. DeFina?
I believe that there are some documents that are still being redacted.
No, they're not. Okay, that's a lie too.
I believe. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't know you were going to talk about this.
Don't even say it anymore, okay? The 80 pieces of paper that they gave me, out of all of it, maybe 20 showed proof of work performance that the behaviorist is doing. The other 68 pages were meaningless. So that's what I mean about transparent government. This is all BS.
I don't have any other slips on this matter. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
Rita J. Merritt, Baldwin resident. First of all, I appreciate the intent with this first draft. I am always concerned that these things get put out there, and clearly by the discussion from the residents who take time out of their day, they don't have support staff or teams working behind the scenes for them to handle what they need to do to pay the taxes and related costs for the staff that our elected officials who sit before me have. So I'm always concerned that there are a number of issues, and I think Mr. Percacci provided some significant recommendations that I would suggest it could go, flying out the window, as so many of my, pro bono suggestions have done. Well, some of them actually have been incorporated, and I appreciate, I read what you had in the paper, Ms. Cabana, with regard to that idea that we had talked about, and I appreciate you doing that and reaching out in the community for our veterans. But I think that this might be something that I would suggest you kind of, roll it back just to give some more consideration to it. Take the input that is well-intended, the emotion and the passion that the residents who come here time and time again, I think that should have some weight on the consideration so that we can try to get this done right versus done quickly. So I'm hoping, again, I appreciate this being a first attempt, because Lord knows we need some transparency in this arena. But let's just take our time so that we can get it right, so that it is inclusive, that it does speak to the needs of the residents who are trying to reflect and represent the fact that we are trying to stay here. We're trying to protect all of our interests, and if we work together better, we might be able to generate more solutions, and less discourse. So that would be my suggestion. Take it as you will, because I'm sure you will, but I'm just hoping that in this instance, cooler heads will prevail so that something this important and this significant, particularly for residents, to feel that they do have a say in where their funds are going. You take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any other public slips.
Valerie Lamp Baldwin. With regards to this transparency, I want to go back to Lucille's issue, okay? Because Felix asked me to be nice today. I think I'm pretty nice. But what we witnessed here was, in my opinion, on May 22nd, an absolute atrocity, okay? This woman has taken time out of her life, as well as her money out of her wallet. She foils in the interest of not only shedding light on significant problems that are happening at the shelter, which is what we really care about, but also we're coming to the table. We're doing, in my opinion, work that some of your staff members should do, and we're taking our time and our money to look into what's really happening. We're not interested in the truths that people are saying. We're interested in the real, brutal, honesty, truth, the happenings that are happening. So what I'm trying to say is she foiled. She was asked for, they gave her, they made an extension. So the typical 20 days came and left. Then it was 45 days. On the deadline, she was able to pick up a file full of papers. And this is what happened. She came here with great intentions to show you her concerns. And instead of anyone saying, hey, you know what, let's take a look at what she's got. Let's look at this file. She was berated, and she was spoken down to, and she was warned that she could get sued for defamation or something. That is what happened. And on top of that, the defense over here, coming from the board, was that there were all these documents that were still pending and that they were being redacted. I believe the exact line was something like, so before you come here and accuse my employees of a crime, you better have proof.
She didn't accuse anyone of a crime. I want to be clear on that. And she is not the person. This is not a witness stand here. This is a constituent, a taxpayer, someone who garnered votes for you. I know that for a fact. We have a mutual friend. I called him to vote for you on election day. And he said to me, who does Lucille think I should vote for? That is true. And he's a CPA, a partner of a very large prestigious firm. And whatever. The point is that she didn't deserve that. And on top of that, the bigger problem, in my opinion, if we're talking about transparency, is that there were no more redacted files. That was all a lie. So whoever is communicating to you, you have a problem with. They're steering you wrong, and they're making you look very, very badly. I'm telling you, that is the truth. They're making you look foolish because you're listening to them and you're not even looking at the papers and the evidence that we pay for and we foil from your records department. That's not right.
Is there anybody else?
Diane Madden, Hempstead. As usual, I just want names. It was very obvious to me, and watching Rick Amarini walk over to our town clerk, and I know she's not a liar, and whisper something in her ear, and Lucille came up and you attacked her, Supervisor. I really wish you'd threaten lawsuits against me because I have much more information. Putting that aside,
I didn't threaten a lawsuit. I warned Ms. DeFina that if you say defamatory comments, you could get sued. I was trying to help her.
yeah, well, she doesn't need your help. You need her help. That's number one. Number two, that's not your job. That's not your job. Lucille's never worried about being sued. As far as the information, you stated that there was more foils coming. The information was being redacted. Who gave you that information?
That information came from the town attorney's office and Mr. Amarini. We get FOIL requests. We meet FOIL requests. Sometimes it takes longer than normal because we have to do redactions. And we have complied with everything to date that I know of. I don't know if there's anything else outstanding. I'd have to go upstairs and check. I'm not sure. But the fact is, we comply with all of the FOIL requests. We have a great relationship with Robert Freeman, who handles FOIL for the state of New York, and we have no complaints from Robert Freeman. We have no complaints from Robert Freeman that says that we're not acting appropriately.
Well,
So
it's under the advice of
if
that
it
office
takes
that Lucille should be filing an Article 78, based on, I believe, Rick Amarini's comment that the information was still being redacted, when in fact, Ms. DeFina did get a letter from Marie Jerome saying no. I won't get into details publicly with the meeting we had after this horrific meeting and the way Lucille was so mistreated and attacked. You're attacking the wrong people because you're the one that said the FOIL was still open and information was being redacted, making it appear that Ms. DeFina made a mistake. She was 100% correct. And the only people liable to a lawsuit are you and the people that defame someone that has been working and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to save animals out of that animal shelter. And still to this day, and much to our surprise, after you took office, our work hasn't stopped.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, I move the hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
I would like to congratulate Councilwoman Erin King Sweeney and Supervisor Laura Gillen on working together to put this transparency law before us today. We've heard some comments from Mr. Procacci and Ms. Meriday. I think that this is a continuing work in progress. Your comments are well taken, but I think this is a great first step, and I vote aye.
Councilman Dunn. Aye. Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Thank you. Councilman Blakeman, for your comments. Yes, I believe this is a massive step forward. We've really come a far way in the past 18 months or so. I welcome all the bipartisan support, and I vote aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
I think this is a great step forward. Mr. Procacci and Ms. Meriday, I hear your comments, but I feel like it's very important to get us going in the right direction. Maybe we can amend it and add more things to increase the transparency in the town, but I really appreciate the town board, Councilwoman King Sweeney, working with me on this initiative, and I vote aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed handicap parking on public streets in East Atlantic Beach, Elmont, Franklin Square, Inwood, Lawrence, Oceanside, Uniondale, and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this matter. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and that the item be adopted.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed revised public parking field maps in Oceanside and Woodmere.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
To consider the adoption of the Town of Hempstead's 2018 capital plan and the 2018 to 2022 multi-year capital plan.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard?
Meta J. Meriday, Baldwin resident. I believe I mentioned some concerns that I had that I don't feel are addressed when I finally did get a copy of the plan. So I'm just again asking, how does this pertain to making any needed changes or outreach to be inclusive of our service disabled and veteran-owned businesses?
The capital plan is designed to address our upcoming infrastructure needs, so that would be outside really of the capital plan. However, I'm working with the senior councilwoman and the rest of the town board to look at MBWE initiatives that we can bring forward in the future in the town.
Okay, but again, it always comes up like discussion or something that can come after or inclusive of, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of this, I would gather that some of this funding does incorporate state and federal monies that we're going after, or we're just going to keep digging into the taxpayer pocket. As part of a capital plan in terms of recommendations or action steps, because I've seen others, this is not my first time at this rodeo, there is aspects that speak to the inclusion of service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, some type of outreach that incorporates minority and women business development in the early stages, not the crumbs after the fact or just before you get to an election you need a photo op. So that's why I'm asking, again, when we start looking at broader strokes, like when does that opportunity present itself in the beginning, in the onset of it, as opposed to being after the fact?
Well, it seems that would be more in the procurement stage of this is a roadmap of the infrastructure plans that we have ahead for the next 5 years.
Right, but a part of it did speak to some type of facility that you were looking at a building or something, like the design component in the types of structures that you're looking to do?
There are a number of plans that are set forth in the capital plan. We worked with all the commissioners of the various departments, including the Highway Department, Parks Department, got their input as to what projects were a priority to get accomplished and a roadmap of how we can accomplish them over the next 5 years and how we're going to fund them.
Right, but part of that funding does require input from design, demolition, excavation. Again, if you don't have any implementation, any platform that speaks to this unmet need, I don't know how many ways I can say it, since, you know, people want to talk about possibly being sued or whatever. When you continue to be in violation of federal law as it pertains to the implementation and the inclusion of service-disabled veteran-owned businesses in particular, and New York State has a 30% MWBE requirement that this township continues to not meet. I don't know what it takes, since we do seem to like to be sued in the township and the county on the backs of residents. So am I just, again, blowing wind because I have the time and energy to do this, which I do not, but does it require, as it gets bandied about in Article 78, which is very expensive, and I'm already involved with 2 of them with other organizations. So again, I am trying to be proactive to say, again, you've got all of this talent here. Like I said, there's millions of dollars in salaries and benefits and et cetera sitting on this side of the room. That you brought in people, you were elected to, you know, make a difference, to be a change. But all I'm seeing again is more of the same. And quite honestly, I'm really tired of hearing about the settlements. I'm really tired of hearing about what didn't get done or who didn't say what. When you have the people who are coming here in their own time and dime to give you the information, to give you the facts, and you just don't seem to be hearing it from us. So do we need News 12 and Newsday? Do we need just the Facts Media? I mean, do we need the Court of Appeals? What would be the answer to get the actual change that we had been expecting? And clearly now that we're in June, it is still not evident. But again, you're going to pass this capital plan. You know, once again, you know, I'm saying it right here, June the 6th, June the 5th, whatever, something's going to come up in Newsday, and then we're going to be the ones who have to pay for it. That shouldn't be the case. That should not be the case.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing? Oh.
Sorry, just very briefly. Richard Shuren, Island Park. I just want to thank you for adopting a 5-year capital plan. I think it's very good management practice, and I'm glad to see that you got it done. And I look forward to some capital improvements. Is there anything other than the normal maintenance, you know, that we could expect that's indicated in the capital plan that we can look forward to? Are there any major projects or any major capital projects that you're planning that you could tell us about?
The capital plan is the roadmap of the priority projects that we have. We got them from input from our various commissioners. So these are the priority projects for that going forward in this plan, but each year we will look at the plan if there's something else that comes up that needs to be addressed. Of course, as we go forward and as we add on the next year for our 5-year plan, it's something that can be adjusted.
I know, I'm just saying, are there any major projects like huge replacements of roads or anything like that you can announce that's part of this plan?
Well, let me just echo what the supervisor said. I think that we do need to take a look at this plan and make some changes based on priorities. I think it's a really good start, so I'm in favor of it. But I also think that once Mr. Conroy reports to us in a couple of weeks and lets us know where we are financially, then I think we can make determinations whether to add or subtract or change what's in the plan. But it's always good to have a 5-year plan because it's as the supervisor said, it's a roadmap for going forward. That doesn't mean you can't change the route, and we may want to change the route in some areas. I have some concerns that, I'd like to be addressed in our capital program, but I don't want to make those proposals until I get a better fix on what our financial condition is, and I think, Mr. Conroy, in a few weeks, you'll be able to give us a better picture of that.
So you're planning on voting against this because you don't think it's complete?
No, I'm voting for it. I think it's a really good start.
Okay, but you're just telling me that it can be amended like in the normal process, like a...
Well, every 5 year, a 5-year plan is a macro.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean at times you don't look at the micro of, okay, what's in the capital plan? How can we change that? How can we make it better? Do we have money to do more things? Do we have less money? Should we be doing less? Then we would change the 5-year capital plan. But right now, it's a good roadmap of where we want to be over the next 5 years. So I'm in favor of it.
And just to be clear, there's no major projects included in this 5-year plan other than the regular maintenance or projects that would normally occur that you can announce.
When you say major, there are road rehabilitation that we're engaged in, which I think, is major. And that's one area that I think I would like us to see if it can be expanded and accelerated over the next 5 years. But we want to be prudent. We want to do the right thing fiscally, so we're going to get a better indication of where our finances are. And once we do, then we can decide whether or not we should do this or that, amend it going forward. But it gives us it gives us a template to talk about those things. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll just conclude by saying I think it's actually a very good step. Nice to see you're actually planning ahead, 5-year capital plan. It's a little amazing that you never had one before, but I think it's a great first step. Thank you.
Thank you.
Felix Procacci, 1165 Bond Street. I just thought of something with this 5-year capital plan. Since we're passing it on a public hearing, what we should do is add a clause that every time this plan is modified, it goes before the public again. So once again, at least people get notified of changes. That's so important here, and that wasn't done, like I said, with the Woodmere Club, with the moratorium, and these are things that affect a lot of lives. This is not a stop sign that you're putting on. I don't expect the public hearing for a stop sign, but things that, affect large sums of money, thousands of people, I think should be put as part of a resolution when it's changed. And just like the budget should be on resolution when you change the budget in the midstream, even though the bottom number stays the same, but if you move a line item from here to there, that should be a resolution, because that's the only way the public knows. Because what are we going to do? Foil the entire town every time in every department, twice a month to see if you did anything? There's no other way that we can know. Thank you.
All right, is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, I move the item be closed and the capital plan adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino.
Yes, but Mr. Ramos?
The councilman is asking if we will look also for grant funding to assist with some of the projects identified in the capital plan. Is that correct?
Madam Supervisor, council members, I have in fact looked at the capital plan during the process. Where we have items that we've been able to offset with grants, we have certainly done so. One of the concerns always with grants, as you know, is while the funds are there, they're competitive, and in some instances grants can't be guaranteed. These are issues that need to be taken care of, but we do absolutely, sir. You're welcome.
Councilman Ambrosino, I just want to state for the record that I think Mr. Ramos has been doing an outstanding job identifying grants, especially in the area of public safety and security, and you're a welcome addition to our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos.
I vote aye.
Okay. Councilman Blakeman? Aye. Councilman Dunn? Aye. Councilwoman King Sweeney?
I'd like to thank Mr. Conroy, Mr. Capabianco, and their staff for all the work that you did to put this together, and also all the commissioners for their individual inputs and the back and forth. And I know we put a lot of pressure on you to cut costs, but we do appreciate it, and I think it's in the best interest of the taxpayers. And I vote aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
I am proud to have introduced a comprehensive 5-year capital plan for our town, put together over the last several months with the input of the town board, the commissioners, and the controller, all of whom I thank for their efforts in putting together this plan. The goal of the plan is to identify the town's funding priorities and to ensure that we are allocating our monies to harden, repair, and renew our aging infrastructure before it becomes a problem. You'll see that the majority of the funds are directed towards roads, which includes pothole repair, road resurfacing, and flooding prevention. We've also included priority funding for pools, parks, improvements, and upgrades. We've inherited some fiscal challenges, which were at the forefront of our thinking, and as a result, the proposed capital budget for 2018 absorbs some of those costs. Thank you again to the town board members, to my staff, to all the department heads for their hard work and input in crafting this plan. We look forward to implementing the plan and building a stronger and more resilient infrastructure and a more fiscally responsible town. I vote aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Application of Beechwood Merrick LLC to rezone from Y Industrial District and X Business District to PUD District and include said lot within the adjacent southeast quadrant of the PUD District located at 695 Merrick Avenue in Westbury.
You, Mr. Pizzuti.
Good afternoon, Madam Supervisor, members of the board. Excuse me for a moment. My associate is handing out some packets for the board. Did I say good afternoon or good morning? I don't remember what I should. Thank you. My name is Vincent Pizzulli with offices at 200 Robbins Lane in Jericho, New York, and I'm representing Beechwood Merrick LLC, which is the applicant and owner of the subject premises. With me this afternoon are the members of Beechwood Merrick, Michael Dubb, Stephen Dubb, and Richard Rosenberg. The subject premises is 695 Merrick Avenue in Westbury. It's section 44, block 78, lot 54 on the Nassau County tax map. The lot area is 5.93 acres, and the property is split zoned. Business district to a depth of 250 feet from Merrick Avenue and industrial district to the rear. The site is currently improved with a 91,000 square foot building formerly used as a Sims department store. The building is currently being used as a retail furniture store pursuant to a month-to-month license agreement. The former Sims store was developed pursuant to the town board's site plan approval in 1988, which also required a loop road connecting the subject premises to adjacent properties to the north and south and 2 fully signalized intersections on Merrick Avenue. The adjacent properties to the north are zoned business and industrial and are improved with a Houlihan's restaurant and a Firestone Automotive Service Center. The adjacent property to the south is zoned business and industrial and improved with retail stores, the Micro Center and the Tile Shop. The adjacent property to the west is zoned PUD and improved with a Home Depot, a Fairway Supermarket, and a PGA Tour Superstore, among others. To the east, across Merrick Avenue, is Eisenhower Park. We are requesting a change of zone from business and industrial to PUD in order to incorporate the subject premises into the adjacent PUD. Inclusion within the PUD zone would allow for the redevelopment of the subject premises with a new apartment hotel, similar to the Vanderbilt, which is located on the west side of the PUD and was also developed by my client. If the petition is granted, the subject premises would be improved with a 6-story, 237-unit apartment hotel with a central lobby, outdoor pool, gym, media room, coffee shop, laundry room, and an on-site superintendent. Hotel occupancies would range from several days to 6 months, and 1 to 2 year leases will be available for apartment occupancies. Like the Vanderbilt on Corporate Drive, the proposed new apartment hotel will fill housing demands for short, medium, and long-term rentals for residents
who no longer wish to own single-family homes or condominiums or be full-time residents. The proposed apartment hotel will be designed for residents who seek the convenience, amenities, and lifestyle of a hotel-style development. I have made several references to the Vanderbilt because it is a real-time example of what we are proposing today. And for anyone who may be unfamiliar with it, the Vanderbilt is the first apartment hotel in the town of Hempstead and was originally called the Portofino. The Portofino was approved by the town board in 2014 when it amended the PUD to include new use and development criteria for apartment hotels. The name change to the Vanderbilt occurred after site plan approval in 2015. I'm pleased to report to the board that the Vanderbilt was completed in February of this year, and we have included interior and exterior photos of the Vanderbilt in our presentation packet today. The Vanderbilt has a total of 194 units and is 80% leased in just 3 months. The proposed new apartment hotel will be similar in design and amenities and is expected to attract the same market niche of residents that have leased units at the Vanderbilt. Town and county residents who are empty nesters seeking transitional or secondary housing, visitors seeking short or long-term occupancies for business purposes or family visitation. In addition, the Vanderbilt and the proposed new apartment hotel are attracting interest from professional athletes for seasonal residences and entertainers for short-term engagements at local venues. The apartment hotels are also attracting interest from doctors who need secondary or temporary residences. We currently have 7 doctors in residence at the Vanderbilt. From a planning perspective, including the subject premises within the PUD will enhance the mixed use and smart growth goals and objectives of the PUD. Specifically, the legislative intent of the PUD is set forth in Section 365 of the BZO, which recites most of the general comprehensive planning goals of the PUD. Some of these goals are to promote the most desirable and suitable use of land on sites which are unique due to size and location, to provide the opportunity for uses which satisfy town-wide needs and are not otherwise available or only available in limited amounts throughout the town, to promote mixed and balanced development that will complement existing land use and transportation patterns so as to prevent the overcrowding of land and minimize congestion, and to encourage innovation and flexibility in design while ensuring that potential environmental impacts are minimized. Providing a new residential venue in an expanded PUD will create a walkable community for residents on the Merrick Avenue side of the PUD, with convenient access and proximity to local shops, stores, restaurants, offices, and Eisenhower Park. Eisenhower Park is directly across the street from the subject premises, and the crosswalk to the park is fully protected by 2 traffic signals on both ends of the loop road. Nassau County bus stops and the Westbury Long Island Railroad Station are also within walking distance or a short commute from the subject premises. The proposed apartment hotel is consistent with all of the applicable PUD planning goals and objectives. Madam Supervisor, with me today I have several of our planning consultants and experts. I'd like to call on 2 of them. The first would be Barry Nelson, our real estate expert.
Can I just ask one question before you go there? I'm looking at this beautiful picture. What a nice rendering. And it's missing something. And you know what it's missing? A flagpole with the United States flag on it. Will you put a flagpole on this?
Absolutely, sir.
And maintain the flag so it doesn't get tattered? God bless you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Mr. Deb just informed me that there is a flagpole on display at the Vanderbilt.
As at every one of my communities.
But it's not in the picture.
It's not in the rendering.
I just want to make sure it's there.
Good eye, Dennis.
Why, thank you kindly.
Good afternoon. It's Barry Nelson, 220 Pettit Avenue, Belmore, New York, 11710. I'm a licensed real estate appraiser, a certified appraiser, and a licensed real estate broker. I handed in an exhibit that'll include photographs of the subject property and the surrounding uses. It also has a Nassau County Department of Assessment tax map at the end highlighting the subject property. A application before the board to rezone the property to include the parcel currently business for a depth of approximately 250 feet, and then the remaining rear portion, 335 feet, all in the PUD zone, and that's continuous to the parcel just to the west. As Councilor mentioned, it's on the west side of Merrick Avenue. Generally, you have Old Country Road to the north, Hempstead Turnpike to the south. You have Stewart Avenue in the middle. This would be contiguous to the southeast quadrant of the PUD district. Immediately to the west of the subject property would be the Home Depot. The north would be adjacent to the property, a restaurant, Houlihan's, and Firestone Auto Repair. As you go further north, you have office, professional services, and you go right up to Bravado Road, which would be south of Old Country Road. Going south, to the south of the subject property would be a big box, former retail, now is Micro Center, and the tile store. Continuing south at 615 Merrick Avenue is a office building on top of parking. It's 5-6 stories, depending on how you look at it. And it is office. Continuing south, you have smaller uses that include a tennis center, a gas station, Stewart Avenue. Continuing south would be the southwest corner of Merrick Avenue and Stewart Avenue. Formerly, was the 1-800 Flowers office building. Now I believe it's known as Magna Care, and it's 7 stories at the southwest corner of Merrick Avenue and Stewart Avenue. The easterly side of Merrick Avenue, again, right up from Old Country Road to the north, all the way down to Hempstead Turnpike, is the Eisenhower County Park. There is no single-family residential dwellings near the subject property or within the Merrick Avenue corridor between Hempstead Turnpike and Old Country Road. It is the park. Everything on the west side, and it would be almost for the same distance from Old Country Road to the north, Hempstead Turnpike to the south, there is no single-family residential dwellings. Again, the east side would be East Meadow. This is Westbury. The developments in the area would include big box type retail. It would include professional services. There has been some vacancy as the subject property was formerly Sims that went out, closed up in 2011, the end of 2011. It had been vacant for a while. Some small type of uses, now a furniture outlet place is currently occupying the premises, but nothing substantial, nothing of any means. You have the Babies R Us now that has become vacant, the Bertucci's southwest corner of Bravado Road, and Merrick Avenue closed up. It's been closed up for over a year now. The redevelopment, or I should say the additional development at the southwest corner of Bravado Road and Merrick Avenue, office building, 5-story front. Now, to the west of that would be the development and completion of the Marriott Courtyard Hotel. You have uses that are compatible to the subject property and encourages the positive development for this site. And again, it's adjacent to, or it's part of the Roosevelt Raceway PUD development, adjacent to the MFO Mitchell Field District to the south, and close proximity to the hub development that'll come forward.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
The Westbury Village Business District has gone through a certain amount of revitalization since there's been development in the community, and that's been having a very positive effect on the Westbury business section, their village. There are still restaurants and businesses there that are struggling. In your professional opinion, would this be a project that would enhance the number of potential customers for the Village of Westbury Business District?
Good question, Councilman Lakeman. I hadn't gotten to that, but this type of development, I was going to get to it, and I'll cut to the chase since you brought that question up. This development will not compete with the downtown business districts. This will encourage the continued positive growth of the Village of Westbury, which has introduced apartments and a similar type of rental.
Excuse me, Ms. Nelson, I think the councilman was asking, this would be very complimentary.
Absolutely, yes. And
Potentially more customers.
absolutely, as Council mentioned.
Because I happen to like some of those restaurants. I'd be very unhappy if they closed.
And there's restaurants within the Roosevelt Raceway area, as well as the downtown village, and it is close proximity to the Long Island Railroad as well. So,
let me interrupt.
By the way, I did get Councilwoman Goosby's permission to go into Westbury, didn't I, Dorothy?
Mr. Nelson, I'm sorry to interrupt your testimony, but I would like to sort of cut to the chase on the record.
Certainly.
Would it be fair to say that large-scale retail development has been trending away from Merrick Avenue and Old Country Road in general?
yes, and that's why I mentioned the vacancies, the former restaurant, Babies R Us, the subject site.
And would it also be fair to say that the introduction of a new apartment hotel at this location would enhance and improve the economy of local businesses, shops, and restaurants, both within the PUD, adjacent to the property, and within a short distance to the Village of Westbury?
That is correct, as well as East Meadow. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
And can I ask, did you say that the Vanderbilt, this comparable property was had 80% leased by 3 months?
Correct. 6 months. In lessons, and so it was CO'd in February, so it's been 3 months.
So there is a demand for this type of housing and hotel.
It's a real-time demonstrated demand.
Thank you.
It looks like in the picture, it's 7 stories at some points.
The parking, you can't see the elevation on the picture, but there's a half of a parking level below grade in the back. So from the front, you see 2 levels of parking below 5 stories of apartments above, but it's actually 6 stories because that lower level is built into the hill.
And has the fire department has the apparatus to be able to go that high?
They do, sir. If I believe we are in the Westbury Fire District, which is the same district that has been inspecting and testing our project at the Vanderbilt.
Excellent. Thank you.
Unless anyone has any more questions for Mr. Nelson, I'd like to introduce Mr. Wayne Muller from RM Engineering to give a brief traffic presentation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Wayne Muller. I'm with the firm of Robinson & Muller Engineering, and our offices are in Huntington, New York. As Mr. Pizzuli's indicated, I'm here to very briefly touch on some of the traffic engineering components of the project that's before the board today. As indicated by Mr. Pizzuli, it is proposed to demolish the existing 90,000 square foot former Sims retail store and construct a 237-unit hotel apartment complex. While it's not evident from the rendering that's on the screens to my left and right, the building will be situated approximately 120 feet back from the Merrick Avenue right-of-way. So it is substantially far back from the road, but it's very difficult to see from the rendering. However, it's more prevalent on the rendered site plan, which is on the screens before you now. Merrick Avenue is a very busy roadway. It's a 5-lane roadway, 2 lanes northbound, 2 lanes southbound, with a center turning lane under the jurisdiction of the Nassau County Department of Public Works. As Mr. Pizzuli has indicated, access to the property will remain as it currently exists today. Excuse me. Currently, the property has access to what we call the loop roadway, which connects the properties both to the north and south via 2 traffic signals that intersect with Merrick Avenue, located both to the north and south of the subject property. In addition, the property will take full advantage of the existing unsignalized driveway that currently exists on Merrick Avenue. One of the major components that we looked at was the anticipated traffic that could be generated by this facility as it would compare to a reoccupation of the former Sims building with a thriving retail facility. And I prepared an analysis which I summarized. I'd like to submit that to the board for their consideration. We utilized national traffic generation statistics prepared by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and I believe the board has heard that reference before. And what we did was we performed an analysis to determine the relative impact of the proposed apartment hotel facility to that which would be generated by a real retail building or a reoccupation of the 90,000 feet, which was Sims. That information is summarized in the table that's being handed up right now. And just quickly looking at the statistics and the calculations that we prepared, you could see that in general, the proposed project would represent a significant reduction in the peak hour traffic that could be generated by this site if it were to remain a fully functioning retail facility. So from a traffic engineering perspective, it's very desirable. We're going to reduce traffic on the roadways. We're going to provide customers for the restaurants that are located both to the north and west of the project. Mr. Blakeman indicated, also in the village of Westbury, which is only located approximately a mile away. It could be a short walk. Someone desired to leave their vehicle in the parking area of the facility and walk just to the north. It's a very short walk, about a mile to the restaurants and also to the Long Island Railroad facility located in the village. In addition, as Mr. Pizzulli has indicated, the NICE bus line 35 is only located about 1,500 feet to the north of the subject. So again, there is transit availability within close proximity to the property, which could tend to reduce, again, further reduce the vehicular traffic generated by this facility.
Excuse me, how many jobs is it anticipated will be created by the construction of this site?
I brought that information with me, Councilman. We had, and this is real-time data, at the Vanderbilt, we had 525 approximately construction jobs.
And that's over a 2-year period?
Correct. Construction commenced in the latter part of, early part of 2016, so it's over just under a 2-year period.
And are those predominantly local contractors?
And they will also, the job upon completion, will have 25 full-time permanent jobs at this.
And just to wrap it all up, as Mr. Pizzulli indicated, there's recreational facilities directly across the street at Eisenhower Park, a very short walk. The 2 traffic signals have pedestrian push buttons to allow people who desire to walk or bike or run or whatever they want to do to go to those facilities to safely cross Merrick Avenue. So just on a whole, and just to summarize real quickly from a traffic engineering perspective, this project is a very positive one, in so much as that it will significantly reduce peak hour traffic within the confines of the study area of the proposed project. Thank you.
How many hotels are there in this particular area? Because I know we're just building a new one on the area right across from Target and so forth over there on that road. And there's some others. How many are there?
There's only one hotel, Pure Hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the Red Roof Inn on Dibley Drive.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Marriott, I believe, or a Courtyard by Marriott,
Mm-hmm.
Road, if I'm not mistaken.
And what about the Hampton Inn? Isn't it Hampton Inn, or is there something similar to that over there? Hilton Inn?
There's a Holiday Inn, right?
How many hotels did you say? I don't have it.
On Bravado Road. On the north side, you have the Hilton Gardens. On the south side is the Marriott Courtyard. If you go down to Stewart Avenue West, just before the entrance, the first entrance into Roosevelt Field at South Street, just east of that, you got La Quinta. If you north on East Gate, I believe it's, I'm not sure which, you have two, the Hampton Inn near Old Country Road, just west of the Galleria Mall. And south of Old Country Road, you have two hotels, the Hampton Inn and the Hyatt.
Mr. Nelson, isn't this?
Excuse me, I'm not finished yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He and I have to do this because, you know, he loves to talk, and I'd like to, you know, think a little bit before I open my mouth, so I have to stop. It doesn't mean anything, okay? I just get him. But anyway, I'd just like to know, what do you think your building another hotel will have an effect upon the occupancy of the others?
I can let council answer that, or we can. Okay.
This is not a pure hotel, Councilwoman.
How many people do you expect to have in it?
Type of use. It's a hybrid between hotel and apartment residence. This product is designed for not just short-term hotel stays, but also for long-term rental occupancies up to 2 years. I don't know if the information is in your summary sheet.
No, I don't have it.
But the unit mix on this project is 50 hotel suites, 28 one-bedroom, 129 two-bedroom, and 33 bedroom.
Oh, I see that.
So it's really a different type of. It's not your patron. It's not your Red Roof Inn patron or your Marriott patron. It's more of a primarily short-term transient stays. This is not a transient type facility.
And it's not the kind I could afford to stay in either. Okay. And you sure you're going to be able to fill this, find the clients for these?
We're already 80% leased.
For all of it? Really?
Yeah.
And one other thing, I see that you had no plans. You have not really spoken to the fire department? Have you spoken with them? Have they?
We're just in the planning phases. We have not produced a set of Section 305 site plan drawings yet, which would have to be produced and vetted by the fire district. But again, I know I'm referring to the Vanderbilt an awful lot, but it's almost an identical type building. We've been through fire department and fire marshal reviews, and we will comply.
I want to make sure that people are safe. I know you do too. Right? I know him very well, so I'm sure he's going to make sure of that. Okay.
Councilman Blakeman.
May I, Senior Councilwoman? Thank you. So it's my understanding that the hospitality component is a niche market. Typically, that would be something that we haven't had in this community. It's for, let's say, a business here wants to import a worker from another area who's an expert, and they have to put him up for a few months, and this is more of a luxury family type of situation rather than your normal typical hospitality.
That is the very definition of
Yeah. So basically, we're not competing with the others, we're competing with Manhattan. Would that be fair to say? Okay, thank you.
Couldn't afford this.
I do, with me today, if anyone has any additional questions, we also have our site plan engineer and our PUD planner available to answer any questions you may have. I know my client, Mr. Dubb, would like to say a few words to the board if that would be okay with you.
I'd just like to make one thing. I saw that you said there will be no impact at all on additional students going into the Uniondale School District. That's correct, right? Correct. Okay. We have one of the residents wants to speak too. After we finish with them, then you can speak. Okay. After they finish.
I have slips.
Oh, you have slips? Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to speak. This is Stephen Dubb. I'm Michael Dubb. I just want to give you, for your consideration, a little bit of the thought process, or kind of let you get inside the mind of a madman. Lifelong resident, grew up a few miles from here, live a few miles from this site. So I've watched Long Island develop over the last 50 plus years. So I was one of the misspent youths who spent a good part of my high school at Roosevelt Raceway, and was saddened to see what became of it, and see as not everybody is as old as I am, has been around as long, have saw what became of Roosevelt Raceway, the rotting grandstand, the rotting hulk that sat there. So I had this idea, and I identified what I thought was a shortage of housing for people to stay on Long Island. And when I originally proposed Meadowbrook Point, many people thought I was crazy, that there wouldn't be a demand or a use or a desire to live in that area. My goal was to create housing for people who wanted to get out of their homes and stay on Long Island, and it was phenomenally successful. We opened Meadowbrook Point just around 2007, just in time for the great economic recession. And recession and all, there was still demand. So after completing Meadowbrook Point, I looked at the adjoining property, and I identified a need that I thought was for people who wanted to stay in the area or come back to the area or be here part-time, and that was how the Vanderbilt was born. There were people who wanted to stay here but didn't want to own a home. And so the demand for the Vanderbilt, I wanted to create something different, and I have to emphasize, and Councilman Gooseby, yours is a very fair question, when you're asking about other hotels. I wanted to create something that had apartments, but the services of a hotel, somewhere, that had a place people could go for a cup of coffee, a gathering area, a nice environment. And as evidenced by the success of the Vanderbilt, the demand is there. So again, as a veteran Long Islander, when I look at what's transpired over the course of the last many years, I kind of look at the PUD, and the PUD is, we don't stop and look, but it's pretty damn successful. It has housing in it, it has supermarkets in it, it has movie theaters in it, it has restaurants in it. You look at Old Country Road to the north, and that is really the prime retail area. The PUD within itself is working, and Merrick Avenue has kind of lost its identity. So when I looked at Merrick Avenue, and we look at Merrick Avenue, I'm kind of feeling like you've got this great asset of a park over there. You're close to a train station. It has all the components of smart growth. And I kind of look at this store that in its heyday was successful, but its time has come and gone, as a bit of a blight right now. It's an ugly looking box, and we'd like to, create something that is desirable for, to keep people here, to give people housing alternatives. We're really land constrained here. It's not like we're in another part of the country where I can just put this in a field. We have to think about reuse, and that's what we're doing. So I just wanted to give you all, for your consideration, a little insight into our thought process. Stephen, anything you want to add?
The only thing I'd add to that is on the existing use of the building, it for years has been pretty vacant. It's been used by transient tenants, opening for a few months and then leaving. There's a lot less demand for big box retail in the area than there used to be. So I think the options for leaving this as a retail building are not going to be good. And so when we approached it, like my father said, we thought that another apartment hotel would be a better use of this piece of property and would make, like you said, an asset out of Eisenhower Park because it'll afford all of our residents great views of it. So that's all.
And Mr. Dubb, you do not have any concerns about occupying this unit or this building, do you?
Absolutely not, Supervisor. So there's an existing Sims, we have to demolish it, and we do all the construction, and we do it ourselves. We don't bring in contractors from off island. We do it all here with local contractors. Yeah, very nice. I think an asset to the community.
I know Sims. I used to shop in there.
So did I.
But it's gone.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Madam Supervisor, members of the board, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for your comprehensive presentation. I have a slip from Michael DiGiulio. No?
Mike is not choosing to speak. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard?
There's two.
Good afternoon. My name is Emmy Funderburg, reside in Roosevelt. I just have a few questions. One, with the new construction that's going out, how many of the companies that you're bringing in to do the instruction will be minorities? Number two, the cost of living there. When you say it's not, I visited the Vanderbilt. I know it's quite expensive, so no one like myself would be able to stay in there. So I'm wondering, you say you're going to fill it up. So are we building just for affluent people? Number two, the impact on the Uniondale School District. I know that Meadowbrook Point did have an impact on the school district, even when it was time for the budget. It was one reason why they felt that it failed was due to the impact from Meadowbrook Point. And then the other, I'm asking again, when we talk about jobs and things of that nature, will it be jobs there for minorities again? I'm always on that because when we start building for affluent population, it kind of leaves out the others that are not able to live there. Also, will we have contracts for those that have businesses here that are minorities who would like to come in and actually be a part of the construction?
Mr. Pazzuzzi, if you would just approach, please. Have you taken a look at the impact on the school district?
Yes, we have, Madam Supervisor.
And if you could just speak to that, please.
This project will be completely 100% tax positive to the school district. We've done the analysis. We've also, as I said previously, in real-time data, we have no school-age children at the Vanderbilt, and it's the same model, it's the same product. These types of occupancies are not permanent resident occupancies, so they don't generally contribute school district population to the district.
Right. It's not the population we're talking about. It's about when you're voting for activities and things that go on. Oftentimes, if you don't have a child in the school district, when they come up with the budget, you're not interested. You don't want it to pass because you don't have children there. So I'm asking, with the type of people that are being housed there, they will have an impact.
These are I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Emmy Funderburg. Nice to meet you.
These are not property owners. These are renters. The school district budget's not going to impact their pocketbooks, so that will not be an issue.
Do they vote? Will they have that opportunity to vote on the budget at all?
They would have an opportunity
okay.
to
So voting
vote
does
if they're a legal resident of the district.
All right. So then that would impact.
Most of these residents are these secondary transitional housing. They live in multiple places.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just comment on that. I am very proud to represent one of the most diverse districts in the town of Hempstead. And basically, in some of our communities where there is a large minority population, what we found is projects like this have been a real boom to the employment in the surrounding areas, and it's been a big plus because obviously this is going to create construction jobs, permanent jobs. There'll be maintenance, I'm sure, on the properties that'll have to be performed. And I also think that it's going to enhance the business districts around there that, you know, depend on residents like this to support them. And that also is going to keep jobs here because there are chefs and waiters and waitresses and bartenders and laundromats and all kinds of businesses that would depend upon these types of projects. And the fact that people actually want to stay on Long Island, especially younger, more affluent people, I think is a very positive thing for the community.
Yeah, well, and that's, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's important, because when you say young people, and then on the same tongue, you say affluent people, and that's just to say, we want to keep young people here, but in order to do that, you have to make living, the cost of living for them in these types of residencies available. And not only that, you know, something that they can afford. So when you say that, it's kind of like a forked tongue, because affluent and young people similarly don't always niche, because if you're just coming out of college and you're trying to stay here on Long Island, the price of the Vanderbilt, that's going to be out of your niche. You're not going to be able to stay there. And then when you say about jobs, I mean, being a cook and a chef or, you know, maintenance, that's one thing. But when you want a job that's going to sustain, you know, you have to look beyond the maintenance. And when we keep talking about, you know, jobs, I'm coming back to construction as well, because when these are built, are we using local minority construction companies to come in and help? I mean, it's one thing, again, we keep talking about affluent, but I like to see some people that look like me in there building and doing some stuff.
Let me say this. People that look like you are affluent. And,
wait, I didn't say that.
Okay, so let me just
stay on that point.
The point I would make is communities surrounding this area, I believe, will be enhanced by more jobs. And basically, right now, Nassau County is going through a renaissance with respect to residential sales. Like take my community of Valley Stream. In Valley Stream right now, you can't find a house for sale. You can't. It's amazing. The market is so strong in that area. Inwood, house goes on the market, sold right away. Elmont, the same situation. So, you know, in my community, we found that it actually rises everybody in the community, and everybody in the community becomes more affluent and has more opportunities.
Yeah, that was well said, but again, my question is, and I just hope someone can answer this, with the contracts of building, are we going to have minority companies that's able to come in and participate? One. Number two, the job market that's going to, I guess, produce these jobs. Are they going to be jobs that, again, I don't want to hear about affluent, because, you know, I didn't say that people like me are not affluent. We are, but can we live in this particular building?
This building is not, this is not permanent housing. This is a commercial hybrid product that is designed to attract tenancies and occupancies that are not permanent full-time residents. There will be, maybe I glossed over this too quickly, but the type of occupant and tenant of this building, as we've shown and demonstrated at the Vanderbilt, they're typically town and county residents who are empty nesters, snowbirds who need transitional or secondary type housing. These are folks that are coming here for extended stay business purposes, folks from out of town visiting family here. Maybe there's an illness in the family and they need to house their family in a nice facility for a month or so, whatever the case may be. And I also want to re-emphasize the point that these are and they're not permanent residents. They're not the type of people that vote in school budget elections. Those are typically the province of homeowners who are directly impacted in their real estate taxes. So there's no conflict there. In terms of contractors, we're open, Beechwood is open for business. Any contractor on Long Island who wants to compete and submit a proposal to us, there's just like any other business on Long Island. So anyone wants to work for us, they make a proposal, they win the bid, they get the job.
Right. Okay, I think what she's asking, maybe if you let her know where she can find this, or some of the people who want to work can find how to go about,
Very good point, and I'd be happy to share that information with her after the meeting.
And you are complying with the NWB?
Correct.
Okay. And wait, one last thing, just so I'm going to say. So you're saying, though, that because the homeowners are not, I guess, homeowners, they're there, so it's transient.
Right.
But just so that you know, even though someone is transient and they live there for a certain amount of time and their children or whomever, when you pay taxes, then you're allowed to vote. And once you are allowed to vote.
They also have to meet the qualifications of being
Okay,
a
no
legal voter,
problem, but.
so they would have to be
yeah, but
registered to vote.
when you can vote, then you make an impact, correct?
Right.
Oh, right, then.
Thank you.
Is there somebody else who'd like to be heard?
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. As a resident who lives in Salisbury Estates...
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could you please just state your name and address for the record?
I'm losing my voice. My name is Bonnie Radafshar. I live in Salisbury Estates in Westbury, and I love Meadowbrook Point. It's beautiful, but the impact of putting additional housing anywhere close to the Westbury train station is a disaster for my neighborhood. We have a problem right now where we can barely find parking, and we use the Westbury train station even though it's in North Hempstead because it's literally, I could walk there. It's I can't walk there, but it's a 2-minute drive. Currently, there is such a shortage of parking there that the mayor of Westbury in the town of North Hempstead is allowing non-resident parking, but we have to pay a fee of $600 a year to do that. Now, I know that many people will say, well, why don't you just go to Merrick? But that is an additional hour per day of commuting. And when you have children that you have to pick up from daycare on the way home from the LIRR, or you have to make dinner or walk your dogs or whatever that is, that's a huge amount of time. So again, Meadowbrook Point is beautiful, but additional housing there, that is going to be a huge problem for the residents of Salisbury and Westbury. It's already a problem. I had to reach out personally to the mayor of Westbury and in North Hempstead because he was not going to allow parking anymore for non-residents. We would have no place to park other than a few meters on the street. He finally got pressured enough to allow us to do that. So just putting additional housing in that neighborhood, it's going to create a larger problem. In addition to that, the traffic on Old Country Road is unbearable under the best of circumstances. You just add more traffic to that area, it could take from my house, which is on Salisbury Park Drive, right by the park, to get to the Parkway, it could take a half an hour. I mean, I could probably walk there faster than I could drive there. That's how bad it is, especially with all those shopping centers. I'm just asking you to please take that into consideration. And in terms of businesses, I mean, those little strip malls where Bloomingdale's outlet is, they're doing really well. But you go into Roosevelt Field and you go into the town of Westbury, or even on the North Hempstead side of Old Country Road, businesses are closing up. I mean, every other day you see another storefront that's closing. So, I mean, excuse me, adding more businesses I don't think is really the answer. Thank you.
Mr. Pazzuzzi? With respect to the concern about parking at the LIRR, is there any consideration of possibly a shuttle for the benefit of your residents or something like that to alleviate some of the parking concerns?
A shuttle is not in the plans, but there is, as I tried to explain earlier this afternoon, the type of resident that will be residing at this facility will probably, if they're taking a train and parking is a difficult thing, they'll Uber, they'll taxi, if you have that. But this is not a housing project.
But you don't know that they're going to take an Uber.
Well, let me finish. Let me finish. Sir. Well, then you have, my client just spoke to that. So
Okay,
if
that
there's a
sounds
need,
good to me.
we'll provide it. Now, on the other, I don't want to rehash all the testimony, but a fully functioning retail store at this location, which is currently zoned, will produce a lot more traffic than 200 some odd apartments, and it'll produce traffic at all the wrong times. This will not impact Old Country Road.
Sir, I have to commend you for that. I was in Fort Lauderdale in a hotel where traffic was horrendous. So what they do is shuttle. They have a shuttle. They'll shuttle to wherever you need to go within a certain amount of time. So you could easily do that with people, going to the railroad train station. That would be.
Congestion is a problem that will be solved.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to be?
Felix Procacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square. I just have one question. Is the developer going to ask for a pilot? That's it. That's all I have.
I forgot that. I meant to ask that.
Mr. Pazzuzzi?
It's premature to determine that, but let me say one thing. If we were to ask for a pilot, it would be at the existing tax base, not so there would be no reduction of taxes. It would only be in the future, but we've yet to determine that. It's way premature for us. Thank you.
One follow-up. Do you have a pilot for the Vanderbilt?
We do have a pilot. So the Vanderbilt was property that was not producing any tax revenue. It was vacant land sitting there for years. So it is now producing tax revenue, and the tax revenue will continue to increase dramatically over the next 10 years. So it will be, over the next 10 years, extremely tax revenue positive.
So, Mr. Dubb, you're committing that if you do decide in the future to go for a pilot, that you will not be seeking a reduction in taxes, that you would use the existing baseline of taxes as
Absolutely, absolutely. So there would be no burden on.
Be no impact on the school
That's
district,
correct.
there'd be no impact on the taxpayers, because that was the bone of contention at Green Acres, was that the taxes were reduced.
Correct.
And that created a burden for the school district, and I think that created a major problem. So I'm happy that you're making that commitment.
Yeah, also, one thing, it came up previously, and you reminded me of it. When I did the Vanderbilt, I met with the School District, the Uniondale School District, and offered internships and jobs, and I actually had a taker. And we did mentor somebody from the Uniondale School District. And in response to a question or comment way earlier by Mr. Dunn, every one of my projects has an American flag in front of it, and I refuse to put my corporate flag under it because I think it cheapens the brand, and as does my own personal home.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more question. Will the developer agree to have a public meeting on this property for, with the public, invite the public to get their input, prior to proceeding with this?
Especially if they want to put a down payment on a unit.
If the gentleman is referring to an IDA, there is a public hearing process.
I'm talking about just a public hearing in a school or something, just so people will know what's going on. I'm not talking about an IDA formal hearing, but much general hearing for the public. Just a meeting with the public. What we're having today. No, but I'm saying that all the community is not here today. An evening meeting where most of the residents can attend.
I think we just had our public hearing, sir, and there will be a site plan review if you want to follow that, but this, we've made our presentation and would like to close the hearing at this point.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing?
Come back. Mita J. Merriday, Baldwin resident. I am concerned, again, unless you have the information with the CEQA and things of that nature, as we're talking about the environmental impact, I'm still concerned about, again, the after effects when it comes down to diverse contracting and involvement and the lack of enforcement in this township as it pertains to not getting clear-cut, defined processes that are inclusive of minority, women, service-disabled, and veteran-owned businesses. Oh yes, we will do X, Y, and Z. That should not be good enough. It's not good enough for me. It should not be good enough for you, particularly in this era where we're talking about disparities and we continue to lack the documentation to support what we say we're going to do as far as transparency, inclusion, and diversity. That's very disappointing to me. The fact that, again, I think housing is a need here. It is crucial. It is critical. But as was stated earlier, when we talk about our young people, and I'm dealing with our young veterans, we have to set up food pantries at our state colleges and universities just so that they can eat to finish school. I had to advocate with our local utilities to keep the lights on for our veterans who we pay for their education, but they weren't able to even keep their lights on. And this was 4 days before Sandy hit. So to say that we have young people who are affluent who are going to be able to live here, and then when we talk about qualifying jobs, just looking at this form here, there are contracts that your group, that you're going to vote on. Most of the people listed here, they're not even based on Long Island, let alone the town of Hempstead. So who is creating jobs if the township itself is not leading by example to create viable jobs for people who could possibly live in this facility? So if somebody could answer, what are the specific steps that are going to involve local, diverse contractors in this process? What are the steps involved in making sure that there is going to be diversity in the hiring practices, not the same old, and what is the environmental impact along with the educational impact on the water, on the sewage? I haven't heard any of that. If this is supposed to be the only public hearing and we now just finding out this information, what are those answers? Does the public have to kind of, storm the gates or something to get some information that they need?
The public has an opportunity to be heard here today. You have an opportunity to speak. Mr. Pizzuzi, I believe, has answered the question about the availability for any business to compete to participate in this project. Mr. Pizzuzi, you can elaborate further. He's also talked about the impact on the school district and the analysis.
But I didn't hear anything about the environment.
The environment is being addressed by the town through the review of an environmental assessment form that has been submitted to the town and it's under review. And council for the board knows that this board cannot make a decision until the environmental review process is complete. And when that process is complete, then this matter will be ready for a vote. Oh, and just for the record, the site is in the Nassau County Sewer District. All the drainage is contained on site, so there is very little, if none, environmental impact. It's a fully developed area, and we're not introducing anything in addition to what has already been produced in the area. And there is capacity in the Nassau County Sewer District, and there's available utilities. Thank you.
Well, you might as well stay, because my other question has to do with, you're saying that you're going to have to tear down the existing facility, the box facility.
There's a 91,000 square foot retail building that will be demolished, correct?
Okay, and have that been assessed as far as potential asbestos, rodents, things of that nature, since it's been empty?
Yes, when we purchased it, my client owns the building, and my client conducted a full environmental audit on that property before purchasing the building. We would not purchase an environmentally contaminated property.
Okay, but tearing down that building
will be done in accordance with all legal requirements of the town and the state and the county. If there's asbestos, it will be abated legally. If there's other materials that need to be disposed of in a special way, that will be complied with, and that's under inspection.
Okay, and all of those costs will be assumed by the developer?
Correct.
Okay, so there's nothing that you're going to, as far as you can say today, there's nothing that you would be bringing back to this board, that would become the
Correct.
responsibility of the taxpayers.
No public assistance whatsoever.
Okay, well, I still would like to see, I personally, and I know others, would like to see more clarity, more specific actual goals, and outline some action plan as it pertains to the diversity and inclusion.
I'd be happy to speak to you, as I offered to the other young lady, to speak to you after the hearing, and we'll discuss that.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Mr. Sharon.
No, I think we should have an open business sign for us. This is the problem. I don't understand.
Richard Sherman, 167 Jefferson Avenue, Island Park. I want to speak to the zoning practices of the town as it relates to this project and other significant projects, such as the Woodmere project. I think it does a disservice to the developer community and to the residents to engage in what's known as spot zoning. Basically, you're willing to change the zoning on a parcel based upon an application, any application that's made. So what happens is developers take a chance and they buy parcels and they take a chance that you're going to agree to change the zoning, and that seems to be what's happened in this case. And the community buys a home and lives in an area based upon certain zoning practices, and then you change it on them, as you're doing with Woodmere, and they get upset. And many times the residents get upset enough that you harm the developers by not giving them the zoning that they expect to get and that they would normally get. And then as a result, many times developers sue, and invariably the town loses because you don't have a master plan, you don't have a process, you don't have a vision for the town of Hempstead. And you end up with a town that has commercial properties and residential areas and commercial properties, and there's no consistency, and it's not a great place to live, and it's not a great place to build either for developers. They're forced to take chances. So we're in a situation where we have a town that's a mishmash, and it doesn't serve anybody. And I'm not saying that you should deny this zoning application, or you should act in a certain way now, but you need to have a master plan, and you need to get rid of spot zoning. A developer shouldn't have to come to a hearing and ask for a zoning change where the result is uncertain. It's not fair to them, and residents shouldn't live in an area where you're going to suddenly introduce a commercial property or turn it into a big residential area. So you need to have some vision. You need to have a better planning process and a better planning department. That's my comment.
You know what? I think you're 100% right. Whoever did our zoning 60, 70 years ago must have been on LSD. There's no right-of-ways. There was no room for expansion. But in deference to those who came before us, I am told by historians who actually study this stuff and urban planners and suburban planners that because of the end of the war with the baby boom, that they just allowed everybody to do whatever they wanted because they needed the housing. You had all these people coming back from the war. They were getting married. They were having babies. And they really didn't give the planning and the thought. And so your point's well taken. And I think that's why this plan unit development there has worked so well, because there was actually some thought given to it and some planning given to it. And we should do that in more communities. So I think you make an excellent point.
Yeah, I just want to say one other thing. The reason I think that the practice persists to this day is because it employs a lot of consultants and attorneys and other people who need to put on presentations such as this and need to take risks. And it creates a whole industry that in my opinion, is unnecessary.
I agree with the beginning part of your statement, and I think we need to be bold. It's 2018. Whatever happened 60 years ago, we need to move past that, right? It's a new generation. We need to be bold. We need to have a vision. But let's not get into people's motives, okay? We are where we are, and I think we all need to move forward in the town of Hempstead and have a new vision and not be afraid of change.
Yeah, I'm not saying. I'm speaking of what's developed around it, and how it's not necessarily beneficial to have a system that creates an environment where, you know, the skill of the attorney or the skill of the consultant is the determining factor as to whether it gets done or not. That's all.
Believe me, John, believe me, sir, that is hardly ever the determining factor, if at all. and I would, and you know, if you
Don't
think,
sell yourself short.
and if you think I'm having a great time here today, you might be mistaken. But I'm having a good time. I wouldn't call it a great time. I want to stick up for the town here for a moment, because there's a lot of new faces on this board. All new faces on this board as compared to 1992. Why is 1992 significant? Roosevelt Raceway closed in 1988. It closed because Governor Cuomo changed the pari-mutuel wagering law, and the track suffered, and it closed. And a lot of tracks closed, not just Roosevelt Raceway. The town of Hempstead, the town board, to its credit, if depending on your point of view, imposed 4 years of 6-month moratoriums. So that's 8 moratoriums that lasted 6 months each and were renewed each 6 months until 1992. In that interim period of time, the town board, this former town board, engaged a planning consultant and gave it its marching orders to study the area and come up with a zoning plan that made sense for the town and for the future. And that was the essence of the PUD. That's how the PUD was created. It is the most well-planned district in the town, and it was enacted by this board in 1992. The original vision of the PUD was significantly different from what it is today, because times have changed and trends in business and development have changed also. There was a strong emphasis on retail development at the inception of the PUD, but there was a residential component designed into that PUD initially, which is what is now today the Avalon development. But by the end of the 90s, if you asked a question, I'm going to give you the whole history lesson. By the end of the 90s, retail markets were stronger, and the residential markets weren't as economically viable. So the PUD shifted towards retail. Starwood Ceruzzi bought 2 of the quadrants, and that's how we wound up with Target, Home Depot, and several of the other uses that have been there since the mid to late 90s. The reverse happened in the 2000s. In the 2000s, the retail started to die off, and housing became a more viable economic product. And one of the byproducts of that economic trend is Meadowbrook Point, which is a 720 condominium unit designed for senior citizens, and was enormously successful, as Mr. Dubb indicated previously. This board, in its current configuration and under prior configurations, has adjusted with the times and modified the PUD when it needed to be modified, and they were sensitive to the needs of the entire community and the business community. So I think the town of Hempstead deserves some credit in that regard.
I would say, I wasn't around then, but I've read about it. And I think that it's fair to say that the Roosevelt Raceway development has been criticized, widely criticized as an incredible political giveaway by the town of Hempstead politicians, and it's what you had a chance to,
no, but that's insulting, because that insults me.
We really need to keep to the public hearing that's right before.
Well, I'll just say this then. I think that
We're going to need to take a break. Our stenographer needs a break. So we'll just take a short break, a 10-minute break.